Welcome into CBS News 24/7. I'm Elizabeth Cook. President Trump's lawyers back in court defending the administration's efforts to deport immigrants. We break down the contentious hearing. Plus how Trump officials accidentally shared war plans to a journalist via group chat. And an unusual chase in Texas, loose cattle stops traffic on a major freeway. You're watching CBS News 24/7. To the White House now, where President Trump just held a meeting with his cabinet this afternoon. Also in attendance, Department of Government Efficiency head Elon Musk. This comes as concerns grow after a journalist was included in a group chat regarding attacks on Houthi rebels in Yemen. President Trump commented on it during a meeting with Louisiana's governor today. Take a listen.
Mr. President, your reaction to the story in The Atlantic that said that some of your top cabinet officials and aides had been discussing very sensitive material through Signal and included an Atlantic reporter for that. What is your response to that?
I don't know anything about it. I'm not a big fan of The Atlantic. To me, it's a magazine that's going out of business. I think it's not much of a magazine, but I know nothing about it. You're saying that they had what?
They were using Signal to coordinate on sensitive materials and
having to do with what? Having to do with what? What were they talking about?
With the Houthis.
The Houthis? You mean the attack on the Houthis?
Right.
Well, it couldn't have been very effective because the attack was very effective. I can tell you that. I don't know anything about it. You're telling me about it for the first time.
CBS News White House reporter Olivia Rinaldi joins us now. Olivia, do you know how that journalist got included in this really sensitive group chat?
Well, Liz, what a shocking report from The Atlantic today, sending ricochets around Washington that Jeffrey Goldberg, the editor-in-chief of The Atlantic, appears to have been accidentally included on a group chat with a lot of heavy hitters, including the Secretary of State, Secretary of Defense, National Security Advisor, the Vice President, Trump's Chief of Staff, on very sensitive plans to attack Houthi rebels in Yemen over the weekend. Now, this report was published today. Jeffrey Goldberg was talking about exactly what transpired in that group chat, which was before the strikes happened, where we saw some conversation between the Vice President and the Secretary of Defense, Pete Hegseth, over whether or not they should postpone the strikes for a month or so. Also quite notable in that group chat, the Vice President appeared to criticize Trump and the administration, saying that there were some inconsistencies in the messaging around Europe, quoting from the piece now, which allegedly shows what the Vice President had said during that group chat. The Vice President said, quote, "I'm not sure the President is aware how inconsistent his message is on Europe. This is with his message on Europe right now. He says there's a further risk that we see a moderate to severe spike in oil prices as a result of these strikes." Now, we are hearing from the spokesperson of the National Security Council, who appears to confirm that these texts are authentic. In a statement to CBS News, he said, "At this time, the message thread that was reported appears to be authentic, and we are reviewing how an inadvertent number was added to the chain." He also said the thread is a demonstration of deep and thoughtful policy coordination between senior officials, putting a little bit of spin on there about spinning what could be a pretty egregious mistake by this administration into something as a thoughtful conversation between policy advisors. Ultimately, the question still remains how this reporter got onto this text thread with some senior administration officials talking about some very sensitive topics, including attacking Houthis in Yemen.
And Olivia, we mentioned this earlier in the show. President Trump met with his cabinet, including Elon Musk, who was not an official member of his cabinet. But what were the key takeaways of that meeting?
Yeah, this was the third known cabinet meeting that Trump has convened with members of his cabinet. Mostly everyone was there. The only person who wasn't was Pete Hegseth, the Secretary of Defense. He's on a trip in the Pacific right now. But Elon Musk was there, and we did hear from Trump talking to the secretaries at the end of that meeting about rooting out the waste, fraud, and abuse in their own agencies. Trump at one point said that what they're doing is not necessarily a popular thing to do, which is to accrue a lot of layoffs as a result of rooting out this waste, fraud, and abuse that he's been talking about. But I do also want to point out another key takeaway that Trump did discuss, which is going to be happening later this week, and that is a trip to Greenland. We know that Second Lady Usha Vance, along with National Security Advisor Mike Waltz, will be making two separate trips to Greenland. This, of course, comes as Trump has talked at length about either purchasing the island or taking control of it one way or another. Those are his words. Trump was asked by our own Ed O'Keefe about this visit and if it was welcome, because we've seen some criticism so far from officials of that nation that this was not a very welcome visit. Trump said he was asked to explain exactly why these officials are going. He said it's not provocation, it's out of friendliness, and he says that they were invited to go. This is, of course, as Trump is still looking to obtain more access to the island of Greenland.
All right, Olivia Rinaldi, thank you so much for that. All right, we're also keeping an eye on Wall Street, where the closing bell rang just moments ago, and stocks rose today, with the Dow up a little bit more than 1%. Markets hinging on hopes the president might ease up on his tariff agenda. So let's take a look at our interactive stock market heat map, brought to you by FinViz, showing the top 500 stocks in real time. Now, the red indicates the stock is down. Green is good. That means it's up. And the size of the box represents the market cap. But as investors cling to hopes of softening tariffs, the president today announced a new measure. He vowed to impose a 25% tariff on any country that purchases oil or gas from Venezuela. And he said more tariffs on everything from cars to AI chips will come shortly. Take a listen.
I call it Liberation Day. April 2nd is Liberation Day. But today, as you know, we did something with respect to Venezuela. You heard about that. And that will be quite important. We'll be announcing some additional tariffs over the next few days, having to do with automobiles, cars, and having also to do a little bit with lumber down the road, lumber and chips. We're going to get all those chip companies coming back. They're already coming back without even doing it. So it's been very good. But we'll be announcing some others. But for the most part, April 2nd will be a big day. That'll be Reciprocal Day.
CBS News contributor Javier David joins us live. Javier, great to see you. A good day on Wall Street. Is this a reaction to the latest tariff changes, do you think?
Yeah, look, this is, a sort of measure of how volatile the market has become. We've got an up day, but in reality, nothing is really sort of resolved. We have the president that is on an almost daily basis deciding that he will put tariffs in place and then he'll pause them and then he'll implement them for various purposes. The market has very little clarity. And so what it does in instances like this is it clings to whatever sort of headline that suggests that maybe there's going to be some resolution. Perhaps there will be, but in the intermediate or the near term, we really don't see a lot of resolution for this at all. And now the implementation of new tariffs on people that are trading with Venezuela is an added complexifier.
Yeah, I want to dig a little deeper into Trump's threat to impose a 25% tariff on countries that buy oil or gas from Venezuela. Walk us through the strategy here, and who do these tariffs really target?
Yeah, look, this is the continuation of a political war of words. It's been raging between Venezuela and the United States for years now. It's the Maduro government is deeply entrenched in power. It continues to cling to power in part because people continue to buy Venezuelan oil. And the major sort of culprits here are China, followed by the U.S. itself, India and Spain. And I think it's Chevron that has to have some sort of exemption carved out for them. But, basically, this is an emblem of the president and how he views tariffs. They're a negotiating tool or they're a blunt instrument. And they can yield results of sorts. But, these decisions by fiat really create a lot of pandemonium, chaos, and uncertainty in the short term, both for consumers and for businesses.
Javier David, thank you so much for being with us. Always great to see you. Well, moments ago, a federal appeals court panel heard arguments regarding the Trump administration's use of a wartime law to deport undocumented Venezuelan immigrants to an El Salvador prison. The case has sparked debate over whether the Trump administration violated a court order halting those deportation flights. CBS News Department of Justice reporter Jake Rosen joins us now. You've been following this story very closely, Jake. What did we learn in court today?
Well, that's right. I just got back from the courtroom where this argument was underway. There were two conservative appointed judges, and there was one Democrat appointed judge in this case in a 3-judge panel, which basically it was just a lightning round of asking questions at these attorneys. It started off with the Department of Justice saying that they felt that this case was actually filed in the wrong venue, and that because the plaintiffs, the 5 original people who sued to block their deportation before Judge James Boasberg, expanded it to fit anyone who would fit under this Trump proclamation of the Alien Enemies Act, that those people are in Texas, and a suit needs to be filed in Texas to basically adjudicate the rest of these claims. The ACLU attorney basically argued that they're not even sure how many alleged Tren de Aragua members or people who are subject of this executive action are actually in the United States, how many of them are in Texas, how many of them are in other states. And by that logic, right, it's very hard for the plaintiffs who are suing in this case, the ACLU, to represent their clients when the government is not telling them where exactly everyone is so that these cases could be pursued locally there. One judge was very skeptical of the Department of Justice's argument that basically President Trump has sweeping power in this case, basically saying that you can exact and put into place the Alien Enemies Act, but you cannot assume that we will not ask questions about it, and we need to make sure as a court that everyone who is actually being deported to countries like El Salvador are actually gang members. The Department of Justice basically said they, again, still believe that he has sweeping presidential authority. There will likely be no decision today, although all 3 judges said that they wanted something expediently so that this can either go to the Supreme Court or be challenged in other ways going forward.
So what's the next step in the legal process for all of this?
Well, down a rung on the court in Judge Boasberg's court, tomorrow the government has due a report and a brief to him on why they did not turn those planes around. And that's, again, a critical part of what you just mentioned of why we even are at this point right now, is because the government did not turn those planes around despite his verbal order. He said he wants a briefing from the government tomorrow, and then by Friday from the plaintiffs, basically explaining each side in the case, and to go down potentially whether he would find the government in contempt of court for not turning those planes around. And we'll see what else comes out of this circuit court. I would expect a ruling soon. They seem to imply, as everyone is aware in this case, that just holding people and potentially the government want to rush them out to get them into planes, that there has to be some kind of decision sooner rather than later on what to do with the people who are in U.S. detention that the Trump administration wants to send to other countries.
All right, Jake Rosen, thanks so much. Tesla's targeted again, this time in Texas. What we know about this latest attack. You're watching CBS News 24/7. Police officers in Texas called a bomb squad to a Tesla dealership after finding suspicious devices. This all happened in Austin. Authorities determined those devices were weapons designed to start a fire. Now, this comes amid a string of violence, vandalism, and arson targeting Tesla EVs and dealerships across the country. You can see a few of those incidents on your screen there in Vegas, Seattle, Kansas City, and Chicago. And taking a look at the numbers, CBS News identified at least 32 cases of Tesla vandalism across 16 states. Those incidents happened all across the map, as you can see here. People in states from Washington to Wyoming to North Carolina taking aim at Tesla in response to CEO Elon Musk's growing political power. CBS News national reporter Karen Waugh joins us live in the car on her way to Austin for this story. Karen, thank you so much for taking the time with us. Let's start with today's bomb squad investigation. What do we know at this point?
Hey, Jules, good to be with you. Yeah, we're heading to Austin, gonna check out this dealership, see if we can talk to any people there. But so far what we know, according to Austin police, they were called to that dealership around 8 this morning in Northwest Austin, where they found suspicious devices, and they called in the bomb squad to investigate. Officials determined these devices were incendiary or meant to cause fires. The good news is no one was hurt, but police are still investigating exactly who did this and why.
And Karen, Attorney General Pam Bondi called this a, quote, wave. This has been a nationwide trend since January. What are you seeing?
Yeah, so the FBI did put out a public safety alert just a few days ago, noticing that this has been a nationwide trend since January. Like you said, our CBS News team, they've confirmed at least 32 incidents involving Teslas across 16 states this year. In at least 13 of those cases, Tesla dealerships, charging stations, and cars were defaced with swastikas or other Nazi references. In at least 4 of those cases, they involved political messages. In a few other cases, included arson, such as when Cybertrucks have been caught on fire. So of course, officials are still investigating these exact motives in these cases, but these incidents are happening as resistance is growing against Elon Musk and DOGE, the Department of Government Efficiency, that has been slashing many of these staffing cuts across federal agencies. And there have been protests at many Tesla dealerships across the country as well. Officials also found a website called Doge Quest. It has a map of names, addresses, and Tesla owners around the U.S. On X, Elon Musk is calling this website and all of these acts as, quote, extreme domestic terrorism. But Elon Musk has said they're ramping up their security at these dealerships, and they're also activating their security systems at their stores, which would record suspicious activity on each of these cars. Jules?
Karen Hua on the road in Texas for us. Thanks so much. Columbia faculty are protesting the university's concessions to President Trump's demands. The university will now make dramatic changes to student protests, discipline, and admissions policies. Columbia also placed the Middle Eastern, South Asian, and African Studies Department under academic receivership. Columbia faculty say that they are defending academic freedom and freedom of speech.
Our own administration, Columbia's administration, issued an anonymous 4-page memo acquiescing to many of the government's demands. Why was that anonymous memo so bad? It yielded to extortion by an arrogant regime making moves that threaten great harm to Columbia. These moves strike at the heart of one of our basic values, academic freedom.
Mahmoud Khalil, the Columbia student detained by ICE after being accused of spreading Hamas propaganda, is facing new charges. He's now being accused of immigration fraud for not disclosing his work with a number of groups. That includes the United Nations Relief and Works Agency, which provides protection and assistance to Palestinian refugees, and Columbia University Apartheid Divest, which wants Columbia to divest economic and academic stakes in Israel. Now, Khalil is a legal resident with no criminal record. His wife, Noor Abdallah, spoke to CBS Sunday Morning about Khalil's decision to be visible in protests.
I understand him not wanting to take those precautions.
What do you mean precautions?
Wearing a mask and you know, just trying not to be so visible. Because for him, that's such an important piece, and standing up for the rights of his people is so, so important. And so I do understand why he made the decision that he made, you know.
Do you think, though, that made him a target?
I think it definitely did.
Now, Khalil remains detained in Louisiana. His hearing is April 8th. The National Weather Service says it's reducing weather balloon launches at 6 more locations across the country. Now, these weather balloons normally go up twice a day and give forecasters vital weather information. The move comes as there is growing concern about the impact of these federal cuts on the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration, or NOAA. CBS News Bay Area's Kenny Choi shows us what's at stake.
Meteorologist Matt Maley keeps a close eye on this latest storm.
This is what we would refer to as water vapor.
Relying on all the technology at the National Weather Center.
That's a good way for us meteorologists to get a snapshot and kind of look at what's happening in the upper levels of the atmosphere, is basically how much moisture content we have.
The NWS falls under the umbrella of the National Oceanic and Atmospheric Administration. Brian Garcia is one of 12 meteorologists at the Monterey Center, which sends out severe weather-related warnings, including tsunamis and flash floods, to the public and local government emergency management agencies. It's a 365, 24/7 operation.
The information that comes out of this office allows communities to prepare ahead of time for those floods.
It's not just forecasts and warnings they provide to 11 counties and some 8 million people. Incident meteorologists will deploy and work alongside first responders during massive wildfires, providing critical information. The Trump administration is directing staffing cuts to NOAA. Fired employees fought back against the cuts across the country. Former NOAA chief Rick Spinard says the workforce reduction is significant.
There have been about 1,200 either early retirements through the deferred retirement program, plus about 600 or so terminations.
The Trump administration is reportedly directing NOAA to lay off an additional 1,000 workers. In addition to the staffing cuts, DOGE announced it may terminate the leases of 19 NOAA offices across the country, including key buildings that generate vital weather forecasts and maintain radar operations. Many employees have been working in Monterey for decades.
We're ingrained into this community and we're invested in this community.
For meteorologists like Maley and Garcia, they're focused on their daily tasks, part of which is to provide critical information during severe weather.
We relay that information to the incident management team. They come up with an action plan for the day, and then they kind of go and attack the fire and try to do what they can.
It's a service they provide for public safety. Kenny Choi, CBS News, Monterey.
Our map takes us now to Arizona, where the search continues for the family of 3 that vanished without a trace following a trip to the Grand Canyon. A mother, daughter, and aunt disappeared over a week ago on their way to Las Vegas. Police say the GPS on the family's rental car last pinged on the I-40 about a mile from a winter storm and deadly crash involving 22 vehicles.
Since the 13th, there has been no phone pings that we've seen, no phone calls, no credit card use. And that GPS, there's never been another point of that GPS on that vehicle. So that does make it difficult.
Now, troopers say they are still working to identify all the cars involved in that crash, and detectives don't know if this missing family was part of that pileup. To New York now, where opening statements begin in the bribery trial of Nadine Menendez. She's the wife of disgraced former New Jersey Senator Bob Menendez, who was convicted in a bribery scheme. Nadine Menendez pleaded not guilty to participating in that scheme. The trial was delayed for a time after Menendez's breast cancer diagnosis and surgery. The search for a woman accused of killing a CAL FIRE captain is now over. Authorities say they've captured the wife and accused killer of Captain Rebecca Marodi outside a hotel room in Mexicali, Mexico. New video shows Yolanda Marodi being turned over to U.S. Marshals at the border. Captain Rebecca Marodi lived in San Diego County with Yolanda. Rebecca was killed last month, found stabbed multiple times inside her home. According to an arrest warrant, the fire captain told her wife she was leaving her and ending the marriage roughly a week before the murder. Firefighters battling several wildfires burning in New Jersey and the Carolinas. Crews say the fire in New Jersey is now fully contained. The blaze burned more than 2,300 acres and hundreds of miles south. Flames forced people out of their homes in North Carolina. And South Carolina's governor declared an emergency in response to the growing wildfire there. Let's send it over to Zoe Mintz. I mean, the conditions there are just so extreme. And this has to be unusual for this time of year, right?
Yeah, normally they're dealing with quite a lot of rainfall. It's severe weather season.
Yeah.
And they did see some rain today, which was really great news. And that's decreased their wildfire threat significantly. And that's the reason that they're able to contain the wildfires up across New Jersey and the Carolinas, because this line of moisture really helped to dampen things. It wasn't necessarily significant enough to get rid of the fire threat completely. There is still that day 1 risk of wildfire danger, mainly across northern Virginia. If maybe it'll pull up, it looks like we're having some issues there. But either way, the winds are still pretty gusty behind this frontal boundary, especially across the Midwest, the Great Lakes. They'll be seeing those gusts upwards of 45 to 55 miles an hour. That will stick around throughout this afternoon, something just to keep your eyes on. But we are going to continue to see the bigger impact being the heat that's building across the country, especially across the South, where we are going to be seeing the potential for record-breaking high temperatures. These are what we're expecting highs today, 80s down across Texas and 90s across Arizona and parts of the desert Southwest, where again, we are going to be seeing by later today record-breaking high temperatures. Again, they'll be in the upper 90s down in parts of Arizona. Not used to feeling this kind of heat in late March. San Jose also going to be in the mid-80s, and even as far north as Oregon, going to be in the 70s. So let's take a closer look at exactly how long we'll be dealing with these well above average temperatures, because again, today we have seen widespread record-breaking highs, and we're going to be seeing the potential for about 70 more daily record high temperatures being broken as this area of high pressure is sitting directly over the west coast of the United States, and it's going to stay there through tomorrow as well. It's the reason that our high temperatures are anywhere from 10 to over 15 degrees above average all across the west coast, while the northeast that was dealing with that storm system is actually a couple of degrees below average. But we are going to continue to warm up into tomorrow. Texas, you're in the 80s today. You'll likely be in the 90s tomorrow, staying in the upper 80s across parts of the desert Southwest and over into California. Again, this heat is going to stick around. Quite a cool down, though, by the later parts of the upcoming week, though, so enjoy the above average temperatures for the first full week of spring while you can. Back to you.
U.S. mail, not for sale. U.S. mail, not for sale.
Thousands of workers nationwide rallied over the weekend to save the U.S. Postal Service. This comes after President Trump suggested that the agency merge with the U.S. Commerce Department. Reporters across the country covered the demonstrations. We begin with Mackenzie Baker in Savannah, Georgia.
In Savannah, hundreds of USPS employees and customers lined Bay Street by the main post office to oppose privatizing the agency.
The fight is real. It's an attack on all of us.
This is the biggest threat that we've faced yet to today.
NALC representatives who organized the protests say rural customers will struggle most if the Postal Service is ordered by the executive branch to merge with the Department of Commerce.
They count on the post office, for their medications, for their packages. Like I said before, that the private companies do not go out and deliver to them without, an exceptional fee. We provide that fee at a low cost.
With the National Association of Letter Carriers holding protests across the country, this is the one that's in Central Texas, and the people here have some concerns about taking the United States Postal Service private.
Everybody is fighting to keep the Postal Service the way that it should be.
Gerard Perry is the branch president for the local NACL. They're a union for letter carriers employed by the USPS. He says President Trump's talk of merging the USPS with the Department of Commerce is the administration's first step towards taking the Postal Service private.
They can slow down how you get the mail. They can slow down how you get your packages. It affects everything if they dismantle and privatize the post office.
Organizers tell me they're happy with the turnout because it wasn't just postal workers and their families who came, but community members who rely on them.
Our mail carrier that I know personally has been so much more than just a deliverer of mail. They really care about the community, they know the community, and we need to support them.
When facing the unknown, mail carriers say it's community support that carries them.
Everybody's taking care of us as we take care of everybody else.
As they fight for job security, workers say they're delivering a message of their own. Eva Anderson, CBS News, Philadelphia.
Jumping the map to Texas now. Check this out. A loose herd of cattle stopping traffic at a busy freeway in Houston. You can see authorities trying to just round them up. Video also shows the cows and bulls running in and out of traffic there. Whoa. And at one point, 2 big trucks were used to block one of the bulls from running away. But the bull ended up jumping over the divider and did get away. The sheriff says at least 3 cattle have been captured so far. What a mess. An investigation to find leaks at the Pentagon, how polygraphs are being used as part of the probe. That's all next on CBS News 24/7. The Pentagon says it is investigating leaks of national security information. As CBS News senior national security correspondent Charlie D'Agata explains, Defense Department personnel could face polygraph tests as the Pentagon tries to figure out how this leak happened.
The brief one-page memo from the DoD chief's staff refers to recent unauthorized disclosures without elaborating on specifically exactly what was leaked or allegedly leaked. But in terms of timing, that memo dropped later on in the evening, the same day Elon Musk visited the Pentagon amid controversy and reports that billionaire businessman had either been briefed or was about to be briefed on classified information on what the DoD refers to as O plans or operational plans. That's like how the U.S. military would conduct a hypothetical war against China, including what to target and when. And yes, it says that anybody thought to be behind the leaks could face polygraphs or lie detector tests and possible criminal prosecution. There were fierce denials, not least in President Trump himself, Defense Secretary Pete Hegseth, DOD spokesman Sean Parnell, who actually demanded a retraction of the original story from the New York Times. And Elon Musk himself suggested criminal prosecution for anybody behind what he called the malicious leaks, even before he arrived here at the Pentagon Friday morning. So this follows a similar investigation from the Department of Homeland Security, again, that will employ polygraphs or lie detector tests, as well as the announcement from the Department of Justice. They were going to launch their own investigation into, quote, the selective leak of inaccurate but nonetheless classified information related to Venezuelan gangs. So going back to the DOD memo, it goes on to say if the investigation results in identifying a party or parties responsible for an unauthorized disclosure, they will be referred to the appropriate law enforcement entity for criminal prosecution. So certainly that is a warning shot over the bow, threatening legal prosecution. Back to you.
Thank you, Charlie. The Trump administration will be revoking the legal status of hundreds of thousands of migrants. Here's CBS News immigration reporter Camilo Montoyo Galvez.
Major policy change by the Trump administration. Officials are now telling more than 500,000 people from Cuba, Haiti, Nicaragua, and Venezuela who came to the U.S. legally under a sponsorship process created by the Biden administration that they have 30 days to pack their bags, to self-register for self-deportation on a smartphone app created by the government, and leave the country voluntarily. If not, the Department of Homeland Security, Vlad, is warning that they will be found, arrested, and deported from the country. And in 30 days, their deportation protections and work permits will expire. These people, again, came to the U.S. legally and right now have legal status, but in the next 30 days, unless a federal court intervenes, they will become part of the undocumented population.
That was Camilo Montoyo de Valdez on our TikTok page. And our social media team has so much great content like this on TikTok and Instagram, by the way. So please follow us at the handle CBS News. That's easy to remember. Well, in an exclusive interview with 60 Minutes, a member of the Sinaloa cartel says he will always find a way to smuggle migrants into the U.S. The man, who used the pseudonym Houthi and agreed to speak if his identity was not revealed. Now, Houthi says he has the experience to navigate difficult terrain while avoiding law enforcement. One thing, though, that has changed about his job is more people are asking him to get them out of the U.S. and into Canada. Canadian officials say their data confirms this shift. Experts say more needs to be done to address the border security concerns of both President Trump and the Canadians.
We've done a lot of great steps in trying to keep the border open. On the Canadian side, we have fallen short in keeping it secure. We do not have a border patrol such as the United States. We have very few officers. So equivalent to ICE, so your Immigration Customs Enforcement in the United States, which has thousands of officers. For our entire country, we have 400. Clearly, if we're going to address the concerns of President Trump, let alone the concerns of many Canadians also, is we need to increase those numbers.
Now, Sundberg estimates Canada would need about 4,000 or 5,000 border officers nationally. Genetic testing company 23andMe files for bankruptcy. What it means for your data. You're watching CBS News 24/7. 23andMe declared bankruptcy. The CEO of the genetic testing company announced she is stepping down as the company files for Chapter 11. And while 23andMe searches for a buyer, millions of customers across the U.S. wonder what will happen to their genetic data. So let's bring in tech journalist Yasmin Karam. Yasmin, always great to see you. Let's start here. What is 23andMe? What happened here to this business?
Yeah, well, it's not so much about the bankruptcy or the decline of 23andMe, more so what is going to happen to all of this sensitive data, which is DNA, as you mentioned. So what's 23andMe? It's a genetic testing company founded 20 years ago. At one point, it was valued at $6 billion. Instead of spending all of this time and money on tracking your lineage to a family tree, 23andMe sends you a packet, you give a DNA sample, and then you get all of this information back. It's pretty amazing. In 2021, they went public by merging with Richard Branson's SPAC. That was its height. And then the chips started to fall. Demand dried up. People no longer wanted to share their personal information with corporations, specifically a tech company, and 23andMe was just that.
So what happens to all this consumer data that 23andMe has?
That's a good question. They have 15 million customers, so 15 million DNA samples. And basically, whoever comes to buy 23andMe, that data will be transferred to them. Today, 23andMe tried to get ahead of that and said they will only sell to a company that has the same kind of privacy protections as they do. Reality is, Liz, we don't know. I mean, the company can come and buy it and then change their privacy protections. People are concerned. There's a lot of videos posted online of folks going and shutting down their accounts, rightfully so.
Yeah, is that the best way to not have the 23andMe have your data, just to cancel your account altogether?
Yes. So we want to show you guys there's step-by-step what you can do. If you gave a sample to 23andMe and you want to shut down your account, you can log in, go to settings, scroll to 23andMe data, then click view, scroll to data, then permanently delete data and make sure that you confirm your request. And there is about a dozen states out there, including California, that there's a law that allows you to ask the company to basically revoke permission to use your saliva sample. So it's worth looking into if you live in one of those states.
Yeah, it's a big concern for the millions of people who have used 23andMe.
Yes.
All right, Yasmin, thank you so much. Great to see you. President Donald Trump's on-again, off-again tariff on Mexico already has one industry paying the price. CBS News correspondent Danya Bacchus takes us to Mexican restaurants on both coasts, stockpiling tequila and bracing for price hikes.
If a margarita is your drink of choice, the possibility of tariffs could be shaking up the price.
As a Mexican restaurant, margaritas is very important.
At La Contenta Oeste in New York, they're already preparing for the impact of a 25% tariff on goods from Mexico.
I have around 90 cases of tequila.
Owner and chef Luis Mora says he usually buys about 20 cases of tequila and mezcal at a time. But since January, he's ordered about a 6-month supply, and he's not alone. Exports of tequila from Mexico to the U.S. jumped 35% in January and 25% in February compared to last year.
We have Mexican products here. We sell nothing but Mexican products.
In Los Angeles, management at Las Perlas Bar is waiting to see if the tariff, which has been paused until April while President Trump is in talks with Mexico's president, will be implemented. If so,
I mean, for us, it's going to be a straightforward thing. We either raise the prices or we take the hit.
Analysts say even if the tariffs are not imposed, the uncertainty has already cost the tequila sector money and could cause a temporary slowdown in sales of the billion-dollar industry. Danya Bacchus, CBS News, Los Angeles.
Top U.S. officials, including Second Lady Usha Vance, visiting Greenland this week, but their trip is already getting some backlash from Greenland's politicians. That's next. Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu testified this morning in his long-running trial on corruption charges. Meanwhile, Hamas says many of its senior officials were killed in this latest round of Israeli attacks, including one on a hospital in Gaza. CBS News correspondent Imtiaz Tayyip has all the details.
Southern Gaza's largest, still-functioning hospital on fire following the Israeli strike. Inside, chaos as dozens of the already sick and wounded suffered injuries and were rushed to safety. Half the staff treating patients here are international medics, including some American doctors. The Israeli military has confirmed it targeted the Nasser hospital in Khan Yunis. It was part of an attempt to kill senior Hamas leader Ismail Barhoum, who was receiving treatment there after being wounded in an airstrike days earlier. A Hamas official later confirmed Barhoum was assassinated. The group also said another of its top members, Salah al-Bardawil, was killed on Saturday in a separate Israeli strike. Israel's renewed war in Gaza began just under a week ago, ending a U.S.-brokered ceasefire that lasted nearly 2 months. All humanitarian aid has also been suspended. Since then, hundreds of Palestinians, including women and children, have been killed. CBS News has also verified the Israeli military's use of American-made 500-pound bombs. The eruption of violence comes as the death toll in Gaza passes 50,000 killed since Israel launched its devastating offensive in retaliation for Hamas's October 7th attacks, marking a grim milestone for a war with no end in sight.
And in a call overnight between Secretary of State Marco Rubio and Israeli Prime Minister Benjamin Netanyahu, the two discussed the resumption of fighting in the Gaza Strip, with Secretary Rubio expressing the U.S.'s, quote, unwavering support for Israel and its policy. Imtiaz Taib, CBS News, London.
All right, news we are following around the world. American and Russian officials are in Saudi Arabia discussing a possible ceasefire between Russia and Ukraine. This comes after separate talks with the Ukrainian team. Influencer Andrew Tate and his brother Tristan are back in Romania to register with authorities amid an ongoing human trafficking investigation. In 2022, several women said that they were held against their will and sexually exploited by the Tate brothers. Andrew Tate is also facing rape charges in Romania. The Tate brothers deny the charges and say they will clear their names in court. Huge crowds greeted Pope Francis at the Vatican on Sunday. The Pope is back at the Vatican for the first time since he was hospitalized with a severe respiratory illness back in February. He's not quite out of the woods yet. His at-home recovery is expected to last 2 months. American delegation is headed to Greenland this week. The visit is drawing criticism, though, from Greenlandic leaders after President Trump repeatedly said he wants to annex the Danish territory. Now, Greenland is an autonomous territory within the Kingdom of Denmark, but both Greenland and Denmark push back on suggestions that the U.S. can acquire the island. But this is not the first time the U.S. tried to gain Greenland as a territory. Back in 1846, Secretary of State William Seward, the same man who negotiated acquiring Alaska from Russia, investigated doing the same with Greenland. He thought the island's coal and fisheries could be a good resource for the growing nation, but never formally asked to buy the nation. Then in 1910, the U.S. made an offer to the Danish government to trade territories. The U.S. would give Denmark an island from the Philippines and the Dutch area in exchange for Greenland. Now, the deal, which also involved a trade with Germany, ultimately fell apart. Now, during World War II, U.S. interests in Greenland were jeopardized. Germany occupied Denmark, leaving the status of Greenland uncertain. The United States established military bases on the shores of Greenland due to its proximity with the East Coast. And in 1946, the U.S. made a secret offer of $100 million in gold in exchange for Greenland. The offer was rebuffed, but Denmark agreed to allow U.S. military bases to remain on the island. So, okay, why the renewed interest in Greenland? Well, military officials have wanted the island for decades because of its location off Canada's northeastern coast. It makes it critical for defending NATO allies. Greenland also sits in the middle of a crucial North Atlantic shipping route that U.S. officials worry could end up in China or Russia's hands. Now, finally, Greenland is home to rare earth minerals needed to make things like cell phones and solar panels. Well, a group of engineers say the next industrial revolution may not happen here on Earth, but in space. British tech company Space Forge has launched a new mission hoping to develop diamonds in orbit. Researchers say the space-grown gems won't be used as jewelry, too bad because they're really pretty, but they're used for high-tech applications such as heat conductors for electric vehicles and telecommunications. Perfect, engineers say, because the diamonds will have a purity not found on Earth where contaminants from the atmosphere can impact the process. Well, America Decides is next. President Trump's firing of 2 Democratic members of the Federal Trade Commission raising new questions about the future of the agency. America Decides with Major Garrett is coming up next. You're watching CBS News 24/7.